Hello everyone. Welcome to watch the Epoch Times today with Sarah Liang. It is time again today for live broadcast with Yuen Papa. As Yuen Papa had some important matters on Wednesday, he was unable to do live broadcast on his own channel. So we're doing live broadcast with Yuen Papa specially today. First of all, Yuen Papa, everyone cares about your safety.
I am very sorry. I had a very important teleconference on Wednesday. It went on and on. Over 20 people were in the teleconference. They asked me to give a talk. I didn't expect to talk that long. I talked over an hour, 2 hours. So I am sorry. My apologies. You care about me so much. I am very, very sorry. I will make up for it these few days. Sorry. I will see how to deal with these things later on. As you know, I am by myself, doing everything. Sometimes my arrangement would fall through. Sorry, everybody.
Right. Yuen Papa, you're now in America and know more about the situation there. President Trump said on Monday, economy between China and America may possibly decouple. How do you look at this China and America's decoupling? What other impacts will it have? He said that it wouldn't impact America's economy that much, but the CCP has kept on saying that this will cause America to shoot itself in the foot. How do you view it? How big will this decoupling's impact be? How will it affect Hong Kong?
Actually, decoupling is just a small thing. What America is doing is isolating the CCP in all directions. You need to remember it's complete isolation, not just military, not just economic, but in all aspects. At the end of the day, the simplest and the most important is those semiconductors. We call it chips. I say in Cantonese, as we are sometimes influenced by others. The issue of chip is simply too big. Chips come from several channels. The CCP is doing it. It has actually done a small quantity, not much. Its own SMIC is doing it. It's doing a small quantity. But sometimes with the military use, it can be said that 90% of chips, 90% of all the chips used in China are imported. It cannot even produce 10%. What is America going to do now? They will cut it off completely. For example, they will stop supplying raw materials to them completely. Making chips needs a lot of special chemicals. Many special machines all will be cut off. So the CCP won't be able to develop and cannot make or manufacture. Cut them off. Then all the chips that China imports from Taiwan, Japan, Korea, next step is to cut them off. Part of the supply is already cut off. The high technology part is already cut off. This is a very serious issue, this chip. You see, now even an iron would use a chip inside. Everything uses it. Not to mention washing machines, fridges. Not a single thing that does not need a chip. What's the consequences of having no chips? That is returning to the agricultural age. For example, going back to farming. This is a very big thing. Just forget about catching up with America. They would be going backwards. What does it mean without chips? It would be like the situation when reforming and opening just started. Do you still remember? You may be too young to remember. It was in 1972. There was a Guangdong Trade Fair. At that time, we hadn't opened up yet in 1972. Reform and opening didn't start until 1977. I went there. I don't know how to describe that situation. It's pretty much like returning to the farming age. Now we can't see that age. That is basically having no industry at all. Because nowadays, all industries involve artificial intelligence. So how can AI be without chips? This issue is simply too big. Everyone starts to feel scared. Now they really begin to be afraid. Because they can now visualize those moves that America has oftentimes made. Take finance, for example. Many of us common people simply cannot imagine. After all, many people don't know finance that well. Those international finance stuff, very few people really understand. But we all know well about chips, because without AI, let's not talk about advanced cell phones. Just say simple things. An electric cooker, how many chips does it use? How much AI is needed to enable the rice to be cooked? Without chips, basically all factories would stop production, let alone weapons, not to mention traffic. This is an all-directional strike, simply terrifying. You can be really forced to go back to what people call the Stone Age. Return to the Stone Age in terms of the industrial sector. It's horrifying. Talking back to the word decoupling, I have indeed kept talking about it. You can have a look at my previous videos. I have been talking about it. America's moves are simply too many. A couple of them would finish you up. Pompeo's current policies, I repeat again. Sorry that I keep repeating it. You know that Europe has NATO. Pompeo has been working on the so-called Indo-Pacific Agreement. Indo-Pacific Agreement is to unite all the countries surrounding China, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, all the way to Australia and India on this side, to come up with a new arrangement. The ASEAN 5 is the agreement. Firstly, human rights is demanded. Very high level of human rights is a must. Secondly, everyone takes out 2% of GDP for defense. They all contribute money to defend together against the CCP's invasion. Now they call just it invasion directly. They are now being straightforward. This word will be used from now on. Thirdly, tariff. Zero tariff. There will be zero tariff between America and these countries. This is just a new idea at present. So with NATO and Indo-Pacific 5 countries combined, a new United Nations will be set up. In New York, I found 2 friends in the United Nations. They have the passes to go in and out, but they don't work with the United Nations. They're just talking about this issue, about the future procedures. To be honest, now actually it can be said that in terms of eliminating the CCP, America is already working on it. You often ask me to talk about it, to make everyone pleased and cheer people greatly. In fact, the whole Washington is doing this, working on how to eliminate the CCP. You see, during the last period, no one mentioned it, so I talked about it. Now everyone is talking about it, so there is no point for me to keep talking. This issue of eliminating the CCP is already taking place. I am also giving a push from here. But we should actually think about the world order after the CCP is gone. Our Hong Kong's order, our mainland's order. Now there are already people starting to consider things in this aspect. American officials are also asking me, how do you view the mainland without the CCP? It is not a big deal for Hong Kong because we have already had a system of democracy and rule of law in place, plus freedom. This system of ours has been existent. It's just being sabotaged by the CCP, but not difficult to resume. We call it liberate, not very difficult. But it would be a big issue for the mainland. Everyone is afraid. We're all worried that the mainland would be chaotic, right? Because there are so many people. It's a very big thing if people are starved to death. So now people talk about isolating the CCP. You say decoupling. Decoupling is just separation. But isolating the CCP is already something that America is doing every day. Doing it every day. It's what the whole Washington is doing every day. For example, isolating the CCP. But from now on, we need to think a bit further. What's the future like after the mainland is liberated? What's the mainland and Hong Kong would look like? And how will the world be? Now honestly, Trump's re-election, everyone can see that he pretty much wins it. Previously I have said 60%, then 70%. Now we can say that 80% chance Trump will win. It has become clear because there was the pandemic in the past period. Now the pandemic is easing. America's economy has started to recover. Trump has been careful with what he says. He hasn't made random remarks. So the whole situation looks pretty good. I feel that we should think a bit more about the future. America is now continually putting pressure on the CCP in all directions. We should think further, think far. I am working on all aspects. I report to you what I have been doing. In New York, I talk about a fairly important thing. I often say, to designate the CCP as a criminal syndicate. Last time in West Coast, I have been to the West Coast twice, then in New York, meeting with many Chinese groups, basically related to democracy movement. All are against the CCP, absolutely against the CCP. I met with them, asking them to fully support me, asking to support me in dealing with the CCP. Having the CCP designated as a transnational criminal syndicate. This way, its party members would be designated as criminals. This time, I also said what I had previously overlooked. Xi Jinping is the head of this criminal syndicate. He is actually the number one enemy of the whole world. The number one enemy of the whole world is not Pompeo, but Xi Jinping. I don't know why people are reluctant to say this. He is actually so. I am now returning to Washington. To push this again, which is in sync with decoupling. How to force it to decouple. After the CCP is designated as a criminal syndicate, its members are criminals. Its leader is the leader of the criminal group. When it comes to the leader of the criminal group, nobody dares to have contact with him, because when they have business, for example, hiring someone, would you hire a person with a criminal background? Someone who has a criminal records? You wouldn't. You must sign a contract with a person. So now, as you know, no matter privately owned or public companies in the mainland, they all have a CCP branch at the top. When you sign the contract with them, in Western countries, solicitors won't sign it because solicitors must do the due diligence. You can't sign a contract with a criminal group. This itself is a problem. So it becomes leaders of the whole world feel Xi Jinping is the leader of a criminal group. I won't associate with you. I try not to invite Xi Jinping. It's like when Japan wanted to invite him to Japan to meet the emperor. How could the emperor meet such a person? Do you understand? After I did this, I'm not only helping US to decouple with the CCP, but also helping her to isolate the CCP. Isolate the CCP, not China. So this is a very important concept. Of course, the US will exert pressure. And eventually, of course, the CCP will come to negotiate. I've been talking about this for a few months, right? The CCP will come to negotiate, and after that, US will request CCP to give up communism. This is the environment actually. The great era is changing. I just push it a little bit. To be honest, I'm now doing it professionally. I can see a little further in this matter. And I can speak a little further. The US government cannot say the Communist Party will be eliminated in the future. It's not the time to say it, but I can say it, right? I'm an ordinary person and I'm not a government official.
Yuen Papa, this time Trump mentioned, in this China-US economic decoupling, US businessmen want to move manufacturing from China back to the United States. Meanwhile, he said, if Biden wins, then the CCP wins, because the CCP wants to own this country. What he meant was that China still wants to own the United States. Is this what it means? Is it to control the United States, the entire US?
Don't forget, just say 2 years ago, for example, Trump did not propose trade requirements for the CCP to make concessions. Before the tariff increase, the momentum was good. The CCP's momentum was very good. The CCP do business with the US every year. There was so much unfavorable balance of trade. CCP made a lot of US dollars. Actually, when CCP did business with other countries, basically it broke even. But America had been supplementing them, furnishing CCP with a large amount of US dollars in trade, in IPOs, and debentures issued. From these few sources, US had provided a lot of dollars to the mainland. Now they will be cut off one by one. Trade is dying, especially after the tariff increase. Then there's the pandemic as well. Basically, the export situation of China is about to die. Even the foreign currency that it earned from America is no longer sustainable. As for IPO, the US is starting to cut it off. What does it mean? It means not allowing American funds to be invested in China concept stocks. In America, those China concept stocks are under the same supervisory system requires to produce quarterly financial reports. They cannot do it, not now. Then it means they're delisted. This is the most important. Our meeting these few days was about this. Must not let them finance in Hong Kong. Then we must point out who they are. It is the Ant Group. Yes, for this company, directly target against this company. What America will do is not to let Hong Kong be its channel to issue bonds, as well as IPOs, because once it's done, first of all, it takes Hong Kong dollars, as shares are in Hong Kong dollars. It has Hong Kong dollars in Hong Kong. Hong Kong still has a lot of ability to exchange for US dollars. Of course, these US dollars benefits the People's Bank of China, the People's Bank of China. Then it becomes its source of foreign exchange. The US must cut off their source of all US dollars. To be honest, what we talked about that day was about this, how to cut US dollars off in Hong Kong. That is, block off the channel the CCP will benefit from. Actually, it doesn't matter for our citizens, because not everyone is speculating in stocks or whatever. But for the CCP, one Ant Group company, a large sum of money, a considerable foreign exchange income, it stipulates all the money earned by mainland companies is not allowed to save in HSBC. It must save in the mainland banks. If so, isn't it just giving it all control? The amount of this foreign currency is enormous. Do you understand? That is why the US has to cut it off now. Everyone in Hong Kong knows that 60 to 70% of the CCP's foreign exchange passes through Hong Kong. The US must cut off this route. This is the action we, in the next few days, are taking against the CCP. So it is not just decoupling, it is to turn off the faucet to stop the water.
That is, the money flow, because listing and financing are important channels for the CCP to move the capital away. It used to go to the US for listings, but now listing in Hong Kong also has to be stopped. Is this what it means?
Yes, I told them that day, not mentioning names here. I said you should make a presidential order that demands all US companies wanting to invest in Chinese concept stocks in Hong Kong. I made it clear, that is, H stocks which are very easy to differentiate, and all the bonds issued in Hong Kong must first get approvals. We were discussing this matter. Then they said this matter has a problem. Why? The US Secretary of the Treasury is worried that it would disrupt the entire market, the entire financial market. It is often said that if it alarmed the financial market, Trump's election campaign would be affected. What if the stocks fail? But I said it won't happen because 2 to 3 trillion US dollars in Hong Kong are invested by Americans there, in stocks or in bonds. If those money goes back to America, as there will be no other places to go otherwise, the money will definitely go back to the US stock market, because in the US, buying anything else will not produce much gains. Buying stocks, at least one can speculate. So it is good for the US stocks instead. So I advised them, must cut off the ties with Hong Kong. I said, only when the CCP's financial resources are cut off with the US, as well as its foreign exchange resources, the most important is Hong Kong. But at the same time, they had one more thing to worry about. What is the CCP doing? Did you see that they were having a celebratory party the other day? Was it yesterday or the day before? A celebratory party was held in Beijing. The CCP now says, we have outdone you guys. We know how to control the epidemic. Since the US did not allow us to list in her market, I will do it in Hong Kong and make it even more successful in Hong Kong. The CCP is bragging, do you understand? The US must crack down on these two things. The epidemic situation is terribly fake. Everyone knows how it boasts itself. There are people dying every day. That celebratory party was just a show for its own people. But this matter in Hong Kong, if it is successful in financing this time, the success will only be short-term. Honestly speaking, after the US dollar and Hong Kong dollar decoupled, success will be minimal. However, if they are successful, the US will greatly lose face. It means US cuts you off, instead you move to Hong Kong. From the international perspective of the foreign countries and the financial world, they would say, US didn't let it go public. It benefited Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is under its control. So on this matter, you have to understand what is happening recently.
Yes, some netizens are concerned and want to ask about its impact on the Hong Kong dollar. Will the Hong Kong dollar and RMB decouple?
The CCP will definitely stick to the end. It will stick hard to support the Hong Kong financial market. But on this matter, the US must decouple. She is doing it now. Why? Let me go back to talk about the US. The US Secretary of the Treasury is the one combating with people in the White House. All day long, worrying about the entire financial market would be interrupted. But Trump dares not, to speak unpleasantly, fire him. Why not? Because this time the US had spent $4 trillion on the relief fund and had talked with the Congress to get the amount from the US Federal Reserve. But talking to the Congress, especially in the Congress, the US House of Representatives is controlled by Democrats. He is the only one who has the ability to talk to the Democratic Party. To convince them successfully, as $4 trillion is not a small amount of money, This time, the relief found to the US depends entirely on him for the negotiation, so it is to his credit, a true credit, because if it were Trump going for the discussion, people would send him away before he even arrived. Do you understand? This conversation allowed him to talk to the Democrats in the House of Representatives and get the approval, but the matter is almost over. A few days ago was the last portion of the fund, only a small amount, just hundreds of billions of dollars. However, an agreement wasn't reached on that amount. Everyone has come to this point because the election is approaching. Each one is against the other on their opinion, so the two parties have completely separated. The so-called function of the Secretary of the Treasury, to Trump, its function is to negotiate well with the Congress, the House of Representatives, to take a little more money to help relieve the people. This function is starting to be gone and has stopped. So you see Trump is getting tougher day by day. If you have followed him recently, he is getting tougher day by day. From now on, he is really tough verbally too. So he does not need to be influenced by this Secretary of the Treasury. The power of the Secretary of the Treasury is great. If Hong Kong's finances are to be sanctioned, decoupled, Hong Kong dollar to be decoupled with the US dollar, all have to be implemented by the Secretary of the Treasury. Anything related to finance, the US Secretary of the Treasury has a lot of power. So now the influence of the Secretary of the Treasury has begun to diminish. Other hawk factions, like Pompeo's strength is getting stronger. The two of them are constantly doing something. The other Dove factions in the White House are taking the sidelines and starting to stand on the side of the hawk faction, especially in this election. Trump's election, he must say that the hawk faction is good. He can't be in the Dove faction, but only in the hawk faction. And says that the things done by the hawk faction is helping America to deal with the CCP. This is roughly the current situation. Sorry, I didn't talk systematically, but this is what's happening in Washington every day.
Yuen Papa, Hong Kong is caught in the middle of the decoupling between China and the US. You know now that Made in Hong Kong has become Made in China. Although the deadline is delayed until November, how will the Hong Kong-funded companies choose? What do you think about Hong Kong's economy here?
In fact, Hong Kong has no industrial sector long ago, moved to the mainland long time ago. The rest of the trade left behind is actually fake, made in Hong Kong. There aren't many things made in Hong Kong, right? Except restaurants for meals. There is no manufacturing industry anymore. All along is bluffing. That is to say, it is actually made in the mainland and shipped to Hong Kong to add a bit of packaging. It is set for assembly and inspection. But what is the assembly? Then pretend to be made in Hong Kong and export out. America has always kept one eye closed, pretending not to see. This is actually bluffing, and the money will not benefit us Hong Kong people, but mostly for those companies that actually colluded with the CCP. This is illegal, and to say it unpleasantly, those companies colluding with the officials, doing this sort of thing, aren't helping our Hong Kong people too much. So, made in Hong Kong, basically these things are just simply words. There isn't any worth, as Hong Kong manufacturing industry had moved to the mainland long ago.
So the impact is not severe, if it is really decoupling.
Yes, only just those few businessmen who are pro-CCP will have some impact. There isn't any big impact on our Hong Kong citizens.
Talking back to the current struggle between China and the US consulate in Hong Kong has sold the land, situated in Shouson Hill Road, and it was cheaply sold to Hong Long at a price of $2.8 billion. How do you see this thing? What does it connotate?
I think they're conspiring together by several real estate developers. If they all try to grab it, the bid should be much higher. When they conspire, it can make the purchase a bit cheaper. If the price is pushed too high, they don't want the CCP to feel that, aren't you people trying to benefit the Americans? Now we're also seeing that Hong Kong also has a very strange phenomenon. Let's go back to the incident we just talked about. Why doesn't the US evacuate its citizens? If a war started, now that a war is almost about to start in the South Sea, Why doesn't the US evacuate its citizens? Why are so many American companies still increasing their capital, still selecting its staff? Basically, it hasn't stopped. And back to this reason again, it is this Secretary of the Treasury, the things in Hong Kong now. Pompeo continues to do what can be done by him, but the whole financial problem in Hong Kong is the responsibility of this Secretary of the Treasury. So take a look now. This Secretary of the Treasury and following, how far will Trump go next? Both Dove and Hawk factions give him options. See which one he chooses, which is tougher. From what I see now, he can say something to decouple. The following methods used will be very tough.
So you think it's the Secretary of the Treasury who is delaying the pace of evacuation and the withdrawal of capital, is that what you mean?
Yes, of course for Hong Kong. If it is not, it will collapse immediately. We can't stand it either, right? I am a Hong Konger and I am very concerned. But the South Sea conflict may be slowed down a bit. This is a fact. But you may be not aware, recently the war is getting more serious. The US controls everything from behind. The entire military affairs in India. India's military has been surrounding China, all commanded by the US. You should see it too. 50 French fighter planes in Taiwan are mobilized. They can't buy parts because France is afraid to sell them. They sold these 50 planes to India. India has always bought from France. There are spare parts. Then the US will provide Taiwan with some of the latest weapons. These are all commanded by the US from behind, that is combating in all directions. The chips are one of them, dealing with it in all aspects. As I see now, after the decoupling, the CCP said internal circulation. Internal circulation means to tighten the belly. To be self-reliance, those we have seen a lot before. I don't know how they are going to live on.
Yes, the latest news from the CCP is to restrict activities of the people in the US Embassy in China, including those from the US Embassy in Hong Kong, but nothing is said specifically. Do you think whether this matter will lead to further actions like closing down the embassy?
This is just a small action because Americans, as you know, the US restricts people from the Chinese embassy from going to universities and all the places where there is technology in the US. Formerly in the US, people from the Chinese embassy in the US can go wherever they want. It's the US that first restricted their movements almost a week ago. Certainly the CCP has to respond. Otherwise, its people would say that it's again beaten. Therefore, it simply put on some poses. You know all these are how they behave. Last time since the US sanctioned 11 people in Hong Kong and mainland China, the CCP also pretended by looking for someone to sanction. In fact, all these are just posing. It ran out of cards very early on. Moreover, they dare not overplay their cards. If they do, the US would use a heavy hammer. Now all are heavy hammers. So it's pretty awesome. Heavy punches and heavy hammers now.
Yes, one of the things that citizens are more concerned about is that there are many young people studying. The US has rejected many overseas students from mainland China, in particular, visas for those people who are related to CCP officials. Actually, will the next step affect the children of Hong Kong senior officials going to study in the US? What do you think?
Yes, the current US policy, I told many people some time ago, to drive the Communist Party members back to the mainland. They have started to investigate those working in technology because it's desperate. It would be troublesome if they return to China with some stolen intelligence. So it must first drive them back, that is to cancel their visas, not allowing them to extend their stay or directly cancel their visas. It's not that it won't be extended when it expires, but it will be canceled directly. You have to leave at once, please. You will even be searched when you are leaving. We'll search all the items, including computers. Then you know. Now the people who won't come to the US, it's almost impossible to get a visa. That is what I said. I also said some time ago, not giving you a visa. The Communist Party members are to be driven back to the mainland. Especially those who study science and technology, is the first group to be driven back. Going back to Hong Kong, I'm very concerned about this matter, so this time I come back is to do this thing. It's about the Hong Kong students, how to classify them. Many viewers have provided me with some advice. They said the children of all the BNO passport holders, the children of those who have BNO. I mean, this is what the viewers advise me. I think this is also a relatively simple method. Children of the people with BNO should be given the green light to study in the US. You look into this matter again to see whether it will work, because these few days, I have started working on this matter in these few weeks. Hong Kong must be given a special status. We Hong Kongers can be treated as mainlanders. However, there is a setback for this, because the Communist Party, as you know, millions of people have infiltrated into Hong Kong. There are millions of people holding our passports now, holding our SAR passport. They are not our Hong Kong people at all. How to prevent them, because this group of people are very dangerous. All of them are party members. Today, all those who hold a Hong Kong passport, except for a few who are relatives, most of them are Communist Party members and their families. We must not give them any benefits. If it's a favor for our students, it must be our Hong Kong children to get the benefits. I think about this BNO passport matter, it can work. Think about it, okay? This boundary line is the simplest line, right? If you apply for a student visa with BNO or something else, this means that only their parents are BNO holders, then their children can have BNO. As for this thing, see if it can work. It sounds to me that it can work.
But some netizens said many BNO passport holders have been infiltrated. It is quite difficult to define because it seems that Chen Chong has said that before 1997, the CCP sent 400,000 underground party members to Hong Kong. It was before 1997.
So I need to talk to you about this matter. First, for example, as for the consulate, to apply for a student visa, the priority is to accept your application is that you are a BNO passport holder, right? If you are the children of the BNO holders, your application will be accepted. And of course, there needs to be some further screening. Let's talk about this matter. If you are fierce, you may help the Communist Party to steal some confidential material. This is another way of screening. But at least, children with BNO can have the opportunity to apply for a visa. Many times now you are not given a chance to be interviewed. You know that to apply for a visa now, you will have to be interviewed. If you are not on the shortlist before interview, your application is rejected. In fact, the US in her education now is very good. It's true. Take this epidemic as an example. The provision of many of those students are free of charge. Boarding and meals are all free. The American universities are rich. One of the universities talked to me. They are particularly willing to take in students from Hong Kong. It's a university in Michigan. They have given me the information, asked me to see which channel I'll work with in the future. There are several schools in the US that are willing, especially the schools and universities run by Christian churches. They are willing to accept Hong Kong students. Let me see what channel to use, because I don't have time yet to deal with this matter, to see which organization is able to take up the responsibility to handle this matter.
Yuen Papa, last time you mentioned none of the senior officials of the CCP dare to claim their assets in the US. Actually, how are they going to get back their assets in the US or overseas? How are they going to handle it?
As you all know, the CCP is beginning to sell their reserves. They're afraid that it will be frozen by the US. The so-called surplus of the CCP, they have bought the US Treasury bonds. They're afraid that this will be frozen by the US. Now they're talking about the Communist Party members. Their overseas assets must be frozen. Each of them is scared. Actually, in this matter, so say the senior officials in the mainland, every senior official has assets overseas. You said how seriously they would oppose Xi Jinping. So we're now pushing this matter. Certainly they're criminals. If the CCP is a criminal group, the party members are criminals. Thus, it is absolutely fair that the assets of the criminals are frozen. Do you understand? For example, you're smuggling white powder and drugs. Certainly, it doesn't necessarily declare that you are guilty. You're a suspected criminal can already confiscate all the assets in your bank. So we now in the incident of this so-called transnational criminal is included in this category. Moreover, after their money is frozen, I suggest to the US government to use that amount of money to rescue all the victims who have suffered losses, all the victims who have incurred losses from this epidemic. All of us know this epidemic came from Wuhan. It was caused by the CCP. After freezing the money of those corrupt officials, it's only fair that we compensate those who suffered from the epidemic in the future.
Yuen Papa, let's talk about what happened in Hong Kong these few days. See if you can give us some quick comments. The first is about Chan Yin-lam. Her case went through 11 days of trial. The jury found the cause of her death to be doubtful. Last year, we all knew that the police said there's nothing suspicious about her death and quickly handled it. What do you think of Chan Yin-lam's case? What do you think of the outcome of this verdict?
It's obvious. We Hong Kong people know very well these things. But in the end, justice will be served. We really have to wait until the liberation of Hong Kong to put these evil police to trial. There needs to be a public hearing for these evil police, all of them. Every single case. I roughly estimate that many more young people are made missing. How many of them were smuggled to the mainland? No one knows the number, and I don't want to estimate. But I know very well in my heart, it's in thousands. In the future, what shall we do to pursue our hatred of this group of people? It's no use saying anything now. We Hong Kong is now occupied by the enemy. All the laws and everything are controlled by the enemy. So we must, basically you live behind the border of the enemy. I am outside the border. You are actually living in the enemy's occupied zone. The case is actually like this. But recently, these few days, I have been paying close attention to these 12 people. Meanwhile, I want to say something about these 12 people. I have been studying these 12 people because, to be honest, those people are now detained in Yantian, Shenzhen. In our aspect, you can't break into the jail to rescue them, to do this and that. I don't have such abilities, but I think legally there's a big problem. In Hong Kong, as you know, Carrie Lam said, this has nothing to do with Hong Kong. It is a problem of the mainland. Carrie Lam has shifted the responsibility, saying that it's none of her business. This means that they didn't break the law of Hong Kong. In this case, they were arrested on the open sea. Yesterday, I asked the Department of State, the US Department of State. I asked whether it is legitimate to arrest people on the open seas, as there is a convention on the open seas around the world. The Americans replied, if they have committed a crime, if there is evidence to prove that they have committed a crime, such as drug trafficking, we Americans often arrest these people. Now we can't see what crime they have committed. What crime did these 12 people commit? If you did commit a crime, for example, if he had committed a crime in Hong Kong and tried to escape, then you arrested him. This is absolutely fair. In Hong Kong, now Carrie Lam said that they're innocent. In Hong Kong, there's no stowaway crime. Remember, there's no stowaway crime in Hong Kong. We're doing the research now. We have a group of people doing the research. This is not a crime in Hong Kong. Therefore, why did you arrest them on the open seas? Why did you CCP arrest them? They did not commit any crime of the mainland. On what basis did the CCP arrest these 12 people? We have to start studying this matter. I know they're in a miserable situation. However, since this matter has been made public, they dare not to specifically torture them. Honestly speaking, it's not against them personally. But now we're going to start pursuing it. They haven't violated the law of China and the law of Hong Kong. What are your bases to arrest them and detain them for so long without persecuting them? CCP can't persecute them. Do you understand? It started to say that this case is very serious. After the arrest, you have to carry out persecution.
Yes, they're not allowed to meet the lawyers. 3 different lawyers and none of them were allowed.
Yes, because CCP suddenly discovered that they did not break the law. How can you arrest innocent people on the open seas? This reality is the key. I have never known how to help them. Do you understand? Actually, I knew about it before they were arrested. When they disappeared and lost contact, many people came to me. They asked me what can be done. At that time, I don't know what can be done, but now I have time to think about it. You arrested innocent people on the open seas. This behavior is an offense. So it's not these 12 people who broke the law, it's the CCP. So it has no way. Hong Kong simply shifted the responsibility and is not going to do anything, right? Because Hong Kong does not have this law. Therefore, you, the mainland, they haven't broken the law in the mainland. So what are you charging him with? You arrested people for no reason and detained them for so long, for so many days. Has it been 2 weeks? It's almost 2 weeks, right? Even if you say that the detention limit time is longer in the mainland, in Hong Kong it's 48 hours, and yet you are not persecuting them. What do you mean? So you have to release them. You have to release them immediately. It is illegal imprisonment, and it's indiscriminate arrest. I have used these two terms.
Yes, even in mainland China, when the human rights activists are arrested, their families are allowed to visit them, whereas families and lawyers of these 12 people were not permitted to see the defendants.
This is a difficult case, how to handle the CCP. You appeared victorious with the arrest of the 12 persons. Actually, this is a difficult case to deal with.
They were arrested in open seas, not within China's borders.
Arresting someone innocent in open seas. If they are criminals, it's fair to arrest them. How could you arrest innocent people? So this case is rather... Now it becomes confusing. Hong Kong's authority tried to shed off her responsibility. Carrie Lam was smart. She said Hong Kong did not do the arrest. It had nothing to do with her. Mainland did the arrest. But did they commit crimes in mainland? You can't even tell what crimes they had committed. So we are looking for ways to deal with the issue, requesting international assistance. Under such circumstances, illegal arrest of 12 people, perhaps international intervention is more appropriate. They need to release them. There is no ground for the arrest. Sometimes Hong Kong people would feel guilty of stowaway. Stowaway is not a crime. What's the crime going to Taiwan? What crimes are there going to Taiwan? Even Hong Kong authorities don't care. The Hong Kong police didn't take action. What reasons do you mainlanders have to arrest them?
Next, you know Fastbeat. He was refused bail. Slowbeat brought back a message from Fastbeat, asking everyone to not worry. How do you look at Fastbeat's case?
Fastbeat and I seem to share mutual feelings. Because my predicament isn't much different from his. What he'd said weren't too much different to my thoughts. I feel this guy is a hero. Not easy for him at all, having been arrested so many times. He is still keeping to his principles, which is worth complimenting. Both Fastbeat and Slowbeat are doing well this time. One refused to take part in the Provisional Legislative Council. Slowbeat simply terminated his term with Legislative Council. Fastbeat is not afraid of might. He continues to fight. These two are heroes of Hong Kong. I have great respect for them. Compared with the pan-democratic team of legislators, our Hong Kong citizens can clearly tell the difference between them. The gap is too big. Those people wanted to go back and fight in the Legislative Council. What a joke. Is there any room left in the Legislative Council to fight? Cardinal Joseph Zen made known his stance yesterday. He said, the Provisional Legislative Council is just a joke, should immediately restart the election.
Yes, when did Fastbeat last contact you, since you two seem to have telepathic communication?
Not on any particular social media. We have communications all the time. I occasionally forwarded information to him. Sometimes it would be inconvenient for him to reply. That I can understand. You see, replying my message could easily... It's bad enough to be charged with one more crime any minute. I definitely find this man hard to find. Of course, his language is definitely not as refined, not as polite as a lawyer, right? But he's a real fighter. Once I was in Wan Chai. I saw him being beaten by someone at the Wan Chai MTR station. I was walking past. He was standing there. Someone paid gangsters to give him a beating. Dismantling his stall on the street. This guy is hard to find.
Yes, let's take a look at what questions the netizens have. Wow, there are 10 questions. I'll try to pick a few. First, your left eye is swollen. They've asked Yuen Papa to take care.
Thank you. I was a bit careless. Often use my hand to rub my eyes. My own fault. A bad habit from my younger days. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, they're worried about you. Second question. When will we see a stop to the Sino-India War? When would the war start? I'm combining all war questions together.
My view is different to theirs. The path US takes is to create a unified attack on the CCP. Do it together so the CCP gets disorderly and loses its defense deployment. Together, charge in from different directions, the East Sea, Taiwan Sea, and South Seas, the Malacca Strait, Indian Oceans as well. The Sino-India border is also a conflicting area. On the military side, a simultaneous challenge is lodged. At the same time, other areas of attack include various financial and high-tech sites, the chips, etc. are being affected. The US is deploying and attacking at the same time. No killing is required, no death and injury, but applying pressure simultaneously to make CCP kneel down and beg for negotiation. Of course, it's like when 2 atomic bombs dropped on Japan, which the US does not intend to do. Any casualties are not what we would like to see. Therefore, America uses pressure of this nature. The war across the Sino-India border won't result in many casualties. That is a small matter. But why India has been so successful this time? Because US satellites can see clearly from above, and it helped direct the Indian troops to fight a war. CCP actually lost by not having a view from above. Last time when UK sent troops to Falkland Islands, it was the US who provided information from the satellite above, where and how every soldier moved. She could provide you the information. Therefore this time, last week, India got the upper hand. CCP admitted defeat, all because of help from the US space satellite. If you know what each soldier is going to do next, where he's going, where you can catch them, she is fighting a 3D war. CCP is only fighting a 2D war. They haven't got the technology. This technology enables a clear view, can discern every single person. Only the US has the technology.
Yes, a netizen continues to ask, the Hong Kong dollar, is it still safe and stable? Another asked, what if converting it to some other currency, such as the US dollar or the GBP, or other foreign currencies? What are your thoughts on converting to other currencies?
Anything but RMB and Hong Kong dollar are safe, because CCP is backing Hong Kong dollar, which is a good thing. Backing Hong Kong dollar means you'll get a good rate. Quickly convert your RMB. I am looking at the long term. Hong Kong people like to gamble. Some of them, as soon as they see IPOs, they would gamble on it. Well, they're doing it at their own risk. However, from a midterm perspective, not to talk about the long term, there's no reason to leave the money there. Go and investigate further. Nowadays, it's difficult to open a bank account in Singapore. Not easy. Someone I know had problems opening an account. Search around. Actually, if you go to Japan, you can open an account there. I remember some years back, I walked into the bank, showed them my passport and money. I had no problems opening an account. Honestly, Japan is safe, no doubt about it. Japan is actually the second largest financial country, not China. CCP is fake. Everything is virtue, not substantial.
But then looking at all the foreign currencies, don't you think the US dollar is still the safest and the most stable?
Yes, talking about the safety currency, all the countries protected by the US are stable. The US dollar, pound, euro, yen, even Taiwan currency is very stable. But those are a bit complicated. The Japanese yen is pretty good, so is the British pound. Besides, a large number of people will emigrate to the UK in the future. Opening an account is also quite easy. Take a passport and your pounds to any bank. It's easy to open an account. Seems doing it in Hong Kong is slightly troublesome. If you like traveling, fly over there. Take a passport and money. An account is easily opened. Local banks are reluctant to go through the process. Personal attendance is the best. Japan is simplest. But Japan requires 5 days quarantine. I've made an inquiry. As I have business there, if you are isolating there, say for 5 days, you can immediately leave after. They don't enforce a full isolation of 14 days in Japan. Try to find a hotel with a bank nearby. Then you can easily open an account. A lot of hotels do have banks nearby. For the customer's convenience, they don't have those handcuff things in Japan. See if you can find a way. It's easy. Just walk in. Korea is okay, but their currency is not so stable.
Okay, Yuen Papa, you did call for a second round of petition earlier. Hong Kong has relaxed the rule on social gathering. The authority has also relaxed the pandemic control. There were only 6 cases yesterday. What are your thoughts to reinitiate the election? What chances do we have?
I submitted the origin petition. There is a certain pressure coming through. This second round is only a reminder. If convenient, please help with the petition. On this issue, my first request was to request the U.S. to support our election, but later I discovered the Human Rights and Democracy Act passed last year. Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. It was clearly written, the general election must be carried out in 2020. Therefore, the act is a direct reminder to them. It is not a request, but remind her to follow the act accordingly. I called the Department of the State, asked, how is the case to be settled? You have to act accordingly. They said, it's in our policy. We have had it positioned. They used the word position. That's a direct reply from the Department of the State. They have the guts to say so, means it can be publicized. Don't underrate the work done to date. The U.S. is still putting pressure on the CCP. They will negotiate sooner or later. Our present demand is, before negotiation, you must settle the Hong Kong election first. Of course, our confidence comes from the present situation, which is to our advantage. The pressure from the U.S. on the CCP, they can't bear it. She is still desperately holding on. It's a dead end. We all know it. We know what a certain level is reached. CCP will ask to negotiate. The U.S. has been ignoring them. The U.S. doesn't want to negotiate on the same level. She wants one with no condition attached. On this, it looks like Liu He will be coming to negotiate soon, hoping to discuss trade, at the same time adding in suggestions of how to relieve the tension. Wang Yi has now softened up in his talk, bringing in mutual survival, all using a similar approach. However, if the U.S. continues to apply pressure, then it will offer a different situation, and the U.S. could say, fix up the Hong Kong problem first. On this, we all have consensus. On this matter, the so-called prerequisites, we all have consensus. I can't go to Europe. There is a summit meeting in Europe soon. Couldn't go to Europe, therefore hadn't done anything there. You know, Europe, there are a few beats behind the US, even the UK. The summit meeting in Europe offers a good opportunity to apply pressure on the CCP. I will see if it's because what I do in Europe has nothing to do with them for the time being. I haven't done anything substantial so far. Therefore, if Nathan Law can speak to Europe at a summit meeting, prerequisites for negotiation would be to first restart the Legislative Council election. Europe also brought it up this time when Wang Yi visited Europe. Everyone raised the questions, not only on the national security law, but also directly requested a timely election for Hong Kong. This time, Wang Yi, in at least 4 places, those foreign ministers asked Wang Yi, what's happening with the Hong Kong election? So I have not been able to contact Nathan Law. Hope you can convey this message. The summit, European Union and CCP are discussing about an important issue. A whole new trade agreement must demand to have the Legislative Council elections first. Supposed to be this month. I don't think there's time for it. Should remind him. I haven't been able to contact him.
Yuen Papa, thank you and take care. Some viewers asked you to use eye drops. May not be useful. It's a case of glaucoma. Must take care of yourself.
No, it's not that serious. I normally carry some antiseptics for the eye with me. As I was away, didn't have the right medication. After coming back, I have applied some medication. It shouldn't be a problem. Should be okay in a day or 2. Was still a bit swollen yesterday. A lot better today. Thank you for your concerns.
Are you continuing with your online live broadcast tomorrow night? On your own channel?
Yes, I will continue with live broadcast. but there will be some information repeated. Sorry.
Okay, people can watch your program there. We'll see you all tomorrow night. Here, we hope everyone will continue to like and support, subscribe to our channel, and help us reach our target of 200,000. Actually, our few remaining protesters, we hope everyone will support our protest and actions.
Actually, our few remaining protesters, we hope everyone will support our protests and actions. Yes, our protesters are getting fewer.
Yes, our protesters are getting fewer. Bye-bye. Thank you, Yuen Papa. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.